afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the City Club Forum. My name is Herb Cam. I'm president of the City Club. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the climactic event in the City Club's pre-election debate series, bringing together the candidates for the Democratic nomination for the high office of the Governor of the State of Ohio. We have drawn their names by lot, and they will appear in the following order. Gerald Springer will lead off the debate, followed by Richard Celeste, followed by Willaim Brown. Let me briefly run through the rules for you. Each candidate has 7 minutes for an opening statement. The order of speaking was determined by lot. A Q&A period will follow with questions being directed to a specific candidate. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question directed to him, and then we will wind up the debate with a closing statement of 2 minutes by each of the candidates in the reverse order from what they began. We have a timekeeper at the round table here in Bob Cavano, former president of the City Club. Gentlemen, I would suggest you watch his signals so that you will not run over the allotted time to you. As indicated, our first speaker will be Gerald N. Springer, who prefers to be known as Jerry Springer. Jerry was born in London, the son of Holocaust refugee parents, grew up in the city of New York in the borough of Queens. He served as a member of council in the city of Cincinnati, also served 1 term there as mayor. He's now running, of course, for the Democratic nomination for the office of Governor of the State of Ohio, and I now introduce to you Mr. Jerry Springer.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this afternoon's debate. Ohio, over the last 10 years, has been a litany of disasters. Over the past 10 years, we have lost more jobs than any state in the Union except Michigan, second worst record in America. The only time Ohio makes national news anymore, except, of course, when the Bengals go to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. But if I were governor, we would have won. The only time Ohio ever makes national news is when schools close or cities go bankrupt or plants shut down, throwing thousands out of work. That is what America knows about Ohio. So the job of the next governor is going to be to turn that record around. We are one of the few states in America that has the capacity to influence its own economy. Not exclusively, but we still have an influence. If Ohio were a country, we'd be one of the richest countries in the world. We're sitting on 200-year supply of coal, third richest coal reserves in America. We're one of the richest water states in America, with a lake to the north and the rivers to the south. We are the second largest urban state, with 8 cities of over 100,000, and yet our number 1 industry is agriculture. So we can feed people. 70% of all Americans live within 500 miles of Columbus. So we're a tremendous marketplace for Ohio's goods and services. If you put all those resources together, human resources, natural resources, energy resources, you say to yourself, if we'd be so rich as a country, how come we're broke as a state? Well, we're broke as a state because we don't use our own resources to affect our own economy. I would like to, today, in a short 7 minutes, talk to you about one of those resources. I would like to create here in the state of Ohio what I call a national offense. President Reagan says that the number 1 priority in America today is national defense. Fine, that's something for a president to talk about. What about our offense? We don't have it anymore. In football, they have what we call prevent defense. You're leading late in the game. Everybody drops back to make sure the other team doesn't throw the long bomb, and you become very conservative on offense. That invariably is when the other team scores. That's exactly what America's playing today. We're playing prevent defense. We've surrounded our country with missiles to make sure nobody throws the long bomb, but we've stopped having an offense. What's our offense? Our minds, our creativity, our schools. Those are our offensive weapons. Right now, education is the lowest priority in our society. It's the lowest priority in our state. It's the only thing we're allowed to vote against. If you get up, people get angry with Reagan, with Reaganomics, they get angry with Congress, you get angry with taxation, you can't vote against your federal income tax. So people get up election morning, angry with government, angry with taxation, angry with their spouse, they go to the polls, say, I'm angry, I'm voting no. What's on the ballot to vote no on? School levies. 3 out of 4 people who vote on school levies don't have children in public schools, and then we wonder why our schools keep closing. I always say that we pay our shortstop in Cincinnati $4.5 million for throwing people out at first base. Great, throws them out every time. He hasn't taught 1 child how to read. What do we pay our teachers? We have to make education a priority again in this state. We're sitting in the 3rd largest corporate headquarters in America, Cleveland, Ohio. And within 5 blocks of these corporate buildings are all these folks who are out of work. And one of the reasons they're out of work is because we held their kids in our schools for 12 years, and we never taught them a skill which relates to the jobs which exist in those buildings. Education has to be the top priority. First, we have to get it off of the property tax. The property tax is an unfair tax. It's unfair to the people that have to pay it because it bears no relationship to their ability to pay. And it's unfair to our students because a child's education becomes dependent purely upon the wealth of his neighbors or the willingness of the neighbors to vote an increase in their tax. When was the last time we voted on state police? Why do we hold our kids hostage to the economic and political environment of the moment? I say we take education off of the property tax, finance it out of statewide graduated income tax. You have a good year, you pay. You have a bad year, you don't. 4 days before the election, I'm telling you we need a statewide graduated income tax, an increased tax to pay for education. It's not sacrilegious to say that. It's the truth. It's the truth. Why do we keep believing that we can run for political office by always saying no new taxes, no new taxes, no new taxes? Those are lies, lies, lies. There are always new taxes. When we're not raising our state taxes, we're forced to raise our local taxes. If we don't pay for education now, we're going to pay for it later. We're going to pay for it in closed schools, bankrupt cities, and our kids bolting for the coast as soon as they turn 18 because they don't believe they have a chance of making it here in America. We are going to have to pay for education. The future is high technology. High technology is not going to come to a state that can't keep its schools open or won't finance its institutions of higher learning. We're going through what New England went through 20, 30 years ago when the textile industry picked up and moved south. New England was devastated. They looked around. What did they have? They had good schools, great universities, and they became the center for high technology. They now have a booming economy. We have to do the same thing here in the state of Ohio. We have to concentrate on a strong education system that will bring jobs to Ohio because there'll be a trained labor force, and there'll be people prepared to take the jobs of the next generation. That is what a governor has to do. I refuse to join the stampede to the right that is taking place here today in this country and is also starting to take place in our party. I sometimes have the feeling, watching the debate, watching this campaign over the last 2 weeks, that we should have shown up last week when you had the Republican candidates here, because I'm not sure I see a difference. I think that we are starting to pay homage to the Republican issues. No matter what we say in this room, the television commercials we run are commercials on the death penalty, commercials on mandatory sentencing, commercials on no new taxes. What is the difference between us and the Republicans if that's what we try and get elected on? I refuse to sacrifice the principles and constituency of the Democratic Party on the altar of no new taxes. When my parents came to this country, they became Democrats. And they decided to become Democrats, and what drew them to the Democratic Party was not the rallying cry of a death penalty. Being survivors of a Holocaust, you start to lose your affection for that remedy. They did not become Democrats because of the rallying cry of mandatory sentencing. They did not become Democrats because of the rallying cry of no new taxes. They became Democrats because the Democratic Party was the one party that seemed to sense the passion and need of people who are down and out at times of their lives, people that are out of work, people that have no money, people that have a mentally retarded child that needs help. These services cost money. And who are we to say that we're going to cut back on those vital services? Not if I'm your governor, not if I'm the leader of the Democratic Party. We are going to fight not just for the leadership of this party, we're going to fight for its soul. We're going to remember that we're Democrats. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry Springer. Dick Celeste first took elective office in 1970 when he was named a state representative to the Ohio legislature. He was re-elected 2 years later and rose to the office of Majority Whip. Mr. Celeste served as lieutenant governor of the state of Ohio from 74 to 78, ran a close race against Governor Rhodes for the governorship in 1978, and now, of course, is running for the Democratic nomination for governor once again. It's a pleasure to introduce to you now Richard F. Celeste, former director, by the way, also of the Peace Corps.
I'm delighted to be here in this traditional forum in a great citadel of free speech and in a great city. We face outside of this room and in this city and across this state and across this nation a tremendously harsh reality. When I declared that I was a candidate for governor, there were 580,000 people out of work. When I announced that Merle Shoemaker was my running mate, there were 620,000 people out of work. Today, there's 650,000 people out of work, more than in the worst days of what was called the Great Depression. And it's not only a matter of numbers, it is a matter of the human impact of that unemployment. Because many of these people who are out of work had worked at the same job for 15 or 20 years and had never imagined that they might be walking the streets and looking for jobs. Now, there are immediate reasons for this, and some I would place directly on the shoulders of Ronald Reagan in Washington. But beyond that, there is a global reality that we must contend with. And that is that we now compete in a global marketplace, that we need to understand our needs in a global marketplace, and we must choose leadership that will turn this state around in the context of that global competition. We cannot accept business as usual or politics as usual or government as usual if we're to see Ohio realize what it is capable of. One of the things that most impressed me as the director of the Peace Corps as I would commute back to Cleveland on weekends are the tremendous resources of this state. Jerry's indicated some of them. But when you think about food production, or you think about energy richness in an energy-poor world, or you think about what water represents, understand that in a global marketplace, these are extraordinary resources. And mustered effectively can give us a real edge in the future. The challenge, if we're to turn Ohio around, is to have a specific program, a program that can build on what is best in us. Build on the jobs that are here, not write off the traditional industries, and attract and grow the jobs of the future. I've said that the day that I take office, I will sign an executive order saying that within strict guidelines, the state of Ohio will use its purchasing power to buy from, to contract with Ohio companies to protect Ohio jobs. There's a reason for that. At a time of an employment emergency, we need to use that resource as effectively as we can. We must move beyond that to fight federal policies that put us at a tremendous disadvantage, particularly trade policies that have become a one-way street. They're not only dangerous for an auto industry or a steel industry, as we've seen in this town, but they're dangerous for every aspiring high-tech industry in this state and in this country today. And Dick Celeste, as governor, will change our representation in a Washington office. We'll work with our congressional delegation. We'll work with the coalition of Great Lakes governors to build muscle behind a trade policy that allows us to compete fairly with other industrial countries. Thirdly, we need to focus on small businesses, the place where we will grow the jobs of the future. 7 out of 10 of the new jobs will come from companies that today may employ 25 people or 75 people or 100 people. The state has just passed a program to use liquor tax revenue to be available for direct loans or loan guarantees for businesses, and said that half of that should be available for small businesses, and then define small business as a company employing 400 people or less. I would want my Director of Economic and Community Development to use that money for firms with 100 or fewer employees to help those companies that most need access to the credit. We should have real professional skills in that department to help small and medium-sized firms compete in the international marketplace. If the state of Ohio had managed to export manufactured goods simply at the rate of the national average over the last 4 years, we would have generated 34,000 additional jobs in this state. I want to go back to an idea I suggested in this forum and at this podium in 1976, talking about new ideas for the future of Ohio. We need a research and entrepreneurship council that brings together the representatives of research going on in our public facilities and in private corporations to identify priority research that deserves public support and private support, to identify what is needed to extend and sustain that research, and to translate that research into business opportunities, to define the ground rules by which people in academia can participate in taking their research ideas and putting them into the marketplace, and to see whether we can't give access to small and medium-sized business to the laboratories and database that we've invested in our public sector. We need to recognize that education is the cornerstone of a healthy economy, and that we must make a commitment to education in Ohio. And it seems to me the critical task is to put in place a permanent solution to Ohio's school finance problems. I believe that means putting a lid on the property tax, each school district contributing perhaps 20 or 22 mills, and then creating a separate education fund in the state budget, earmarking our corporate and personal income tax and the lottery dollars, just so that we later rest those questions, and putting those dollars back into school districts to meet the basic education needs of our young people. I think we have a tremendous opportunity in the state of Ohio, and we have considerable resources. The challenge is to understand that doing business the way we've always done in the past will not be sufficient. And when we choose leadership, to identify leadership whose experience, whose relationships with the legislative body, whose ability to understand what is going on in Washington and the world is sufficient to set forth an agenda and to mobilize people around that agenda. I think that Dick Celeste and Merle Shoemaker represent that leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dick Celeste. Final participant in this three-corner debate is Willaim J. Brown, who at the age of 30 set a precedent never before attained by being elected Attorney General of the state of Ohio, and went on from that point to be elected 3 times altogether, a feat never before performed in the state of Ohio. That's the only elective office he's ever had, but he also claims the distinction of having come from the community of Cadiz. Is that right, Bill? Cadiz? Cadiz, in southern Ohio, which Bill tells me also gave rise to one Clark Gable, so he's been in distinguished company. It's a pleasure to introduce to you now the Attorney General of the state of Ohio and candidate for the Democratic nomination for Governor, Willaim J. Brown.
Herb, thank you very much, and to Dick and Jerry and to the guests at the City Club. I want to speak first to the more than 600,000 men and women of Ohio who are looking for work and can't find it. I've talked to many of you during the past year, people like Mary McGovern, who's a forklift operator in Columbus, Ohio, who was unemployed, or to Dennis Patton, an unemployed auto worker here in Cleveland. These are difficult times for both of you. And they're difficult times for many Ohioans, for auto workers, steel workers, school teachers, sales clerks. Like you, they have also lost their jobs. It's difficult for 50% of the black youth who can't find work. It's difficult for senior citizens on fixed incomes facing rising costs in housing and health care and utilities. And these difficult times are made worse by a frustration that so many of us feel. Frustration that comes from a sense that government has lost its ability or its willingness to deal with our problems. You deserve better from your leaders. Ronald Reagan said he was a friend of the working man and woman. He's not your friend. If you want to work, but everywhere you turn, the Reagan policies are blocking your path. Meanwhile, big business and the privileged few who benefit from the huge tax breaks are doing just fine. Don't kid yourself. These policies are aimed at helping the rich and no one else. Think of the families of the 600,000 unemployed Ohioans who lost work, how they've had to cut back on food, clothing, even driving their cars. Think of the fear of those who think that they may be next. And then compare them to the man in the limousine that all of us see but few of us know. That's the person that the Reagan tax policies are helping. Now let me turn to the issues directly facing the state of Ohio. The Democratic Party is very fortunate to have a clear choice in who should face the Republicans in the fall. A clear choice on record of performance and a clear choice on issues. Now let's look at these issues and where I stand in relation to my opponents. Let's take jobs. Putting Ohio back to work will be my top priority as governor. I have a detailed plan to protect the jobs we have and attract new ones to this state. My plan is straightforward and has 3 main components. First, we will protect the jobs we already have by lowering the cost of doing business in Ohio. Second, we will attract new growth industries to the state by encouraging small business and by forging a link between technology and industry. Third, we will get tough with Washington to get our fair share from Ohio in federal money. There's my plan. It's not fancy. It doesn't require massive spending. Now, let me tell you the most significant difference of my job plan. That difference is not found in a platform or a position. It's found in a person. And he's with us today. He's my running mate, Charlie Vanek. Charlie has 26 years of experience in dealing with Washington, and he knows how Washington works, where the power is, and how to get things done. He'll spearhead a major effort to get Ohio its fair share from Washington, not relying on legislative initiatives, but by simply getting the money that's owed to us. Now, let us turn to taxes. By July 1st, the people of Ohio will have had 3 major tax increases. With depression-level unemployment, they cannot afford another one. Through tough management, we can save millions of tax dollars. We can do this by streamlining our energy bureaucracy, by reforming Medicaid, by improving property tax collections, by consolidating duplicative services and courses at our universities, and finding the fathers who have abandoned their children to ADC. So what about taxes? I'm against them. Jerry's for them. And Dick's, he's a maybe. I already got 7 minutes. Let me repeat. No new taxes. And then what about crime? Here again, my position is clear. And I want the voters to know it. My crime plan begins with mandatory sentences and ends with the death penalty for murder. And on public education, again, my plan here is in marked contrast to my opponents. I've talked about restoring discipline in the classroom, about incentives for improving the management of the system, and about making better use of the money that we have. Now, Dick and Jerry have talked about spending more money. And then how do we differ on energy? Well, I have a comprehensive energy program, one that would attack the root of the problem, the PUCO and the other 29 separate and distinct and autonomous agencies that one way or the other affect your utility bill. We're going to bring you some justice in your energy bill in the 80s. Now, Dick's plan, he wants to fire the Public Utilities Commissioner, which doesn't have the authority to do. Jerry's, he wants to burn more Ohio coal. A worthy goal. A goal I share. Finally, I want to talk about something that I think's been overlooked in this campaign, and that's management experience. You know, I've been Attorney General for 12 years. Working with the people of Ohio, we've managed a lot of success. We've returned millions of dollars to ripped-off consumers, cleaned up toxic waste sites, found millions of dollars to create jobs, written the toughest bills against violent crime in Ohio history, and have come to the aid of thousands of victims of discrimination. But you know what I'm really proud of? We managed to do all of this and return more money to the Ohio Treasury than what we spent. That's called a record of tough management. And I'm the only candidate who can say that. 4 years from now, I'd like to come back to the City Club and say to the people like Mary McGovern and Dennis Patton, we have Ohio's factories and businesses producing again, giving people like you a productive job. We have a system of fair and effective regulation of our energy resources. We have put the violent offender behind bars and made our neighborhoods safer. We have restored confidence in our public schools. We stood up to Washington and to Ronald Reagan, and we've restored confidence in our government by managing it in a way that's fair to the taxpayers of this state. And finally, I'd like to say to them and for all of you for 4 years, by working together, we can once again look forward to the future with pride and with confidence. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, William J. Brown. Thank you all, gentlemen. Today at the City Club, we are listening to a debate by the candidates for the Democratic nomination for governor. In just a moment, we'll have our traditional question and answer period, but first permit me to make a few brief announcements. This month, the City Club is wrapping up its program here at the... Charlie, can't you hear? Wrapping up its affairs here at this location. We'll be moving to new headquarters when they are completed. We are moving out to make room for the Ohio building. As you know, we will have temporary headquarters at the Hollenden House. The final event on our City Club calendar will be this year's edition of the famous Anvil Review, right here on this stage. As a matter of fact, we take this matter so seriously, I've been taking voice lessons from Dorothy Fullheim. All of you will want to witness this grand demonstration of wit and satire, and I would suggest you get your tickets very early because the script already is being worked over by Bob Conrad of WCLV, and he tells me it's the usual brilliant job. June 25th is the date. Please make your reservations right now. The tickets are $10 each. The last forum of the season, and the last in this location, by the way, will feature an address by Senator John Glenn. And next week, that's June 11th, Senator Glenn will be here on the 18th, we have the privilege of a visit by the distinguished ambassador of the to the United Nations from the State of Israel, Dr. Yehuda Blum. So I would once again urge all of you to make your reservations as soon as possible. Now for the questions. Let me remind you once again that a question should be directed to a specific candidate, and each candidate will have only a minute to answer that question. Alan Davis has a microphone in the front of the room, Bob Conrad in the rear.
Mr. Celeste, in 1978, many people, including myself, thought that Rhodes did not win the election, but that you lost it by running a Me Too timid campaign. If you should win the primary, what assurances do we Democrats have that you will not again blow the election?
I'd like to begin by saying that I was the only Democrat with the guts to run against Jim Rhodes in 1978. And I look forward to running against any Republican who is able to emerge from their primary.
I have a question which I have consciously worded so that it can be answered with a simple yes or no. And I address it, if you'll pardon me, Herb, to all three candidates. If you're elected governor, are you willing to make a solemn commitment here and now that one of the first things you will do is to force, by court action if necessary, a legal compliance audit of the $3 billion Workers' Compensation Fund? A legal compliance audit means going in and determining whether the money is being spent legally or fraudulently or illegally. That hasn't been done in 67 years, and in the last 10 years, on several occasions, the system has been declared unauditable, which it is today. Yes or no, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
I will say yes, but I'd like to at least address it just somewhat. The Workers' Compensation Fund, like many other funds and many other agencies, boards, and commissions, have never been inventoried in the last 50 years. We've got many agencies that need an audit for performance, an audit for money, job descriptions for the people, because the state of Ohio's government right now is not running very efficiently.
Yes.
Question I would like to address to all three candidates. Okay. Mr. Springer, I'd like to know what your position will be in view of the issue of mandatory sentencing, which we seem to have a lot of different and conflicting views on. My question would be directed to how, once we sentence these individuals, we will deal with the overcrowded penal system the needed reforms and who is going to foot the bill that will actually arise from this kind of heavy court docking and heavy implication on our own population.
In 1 minute, we will foot the bill. No one's going to donate those facilities to us, so we're going to have to foot the bill. To have mandatory or presumptive sentencing, obviously we're going to need additional facilities that are humane, facilities whereby there is some hope that when the person completes his or her sentence, they will have a chance of coming into this society and not repeating the kind of offenses that have taken place before. That is what I got out of the question. Did I miss any part of the question? The money will come out of the state budget, which is a statewide graduated income tax. There is no way to say that you're for mandatory sentencing and then at the same time say that we won't have a tax increase, because you can't ask these people to stand by a tree and not move for 20 years. You got to put them in something.
This is for Attorney General Bill Brown. Mr. Attorney General, if you are elected, do you have any specific state programs that you would attack to eliminate waste in government?
You can begin with the energy system, which at the present time is wasting about $20 million of taxpayers' money. If we just use the usual cost containment devices, which we now have available in Medicaid, we can save another $50 million. If we just do as good a job as the state of Michigan is doing for wayward fathers that have their children on ADC, we can do another $40 million, and that's just off the top of my head, Sheldon.
We all know, the women of Ohio know that jobs are very important, but we know that unemployment has a special impact on women, whether it be the last to be hired and they're the first to be fired, and whether it's the special domestic problem at home with unemployed husbands. Therefore, I ask, what has each of the candidates done? What is their past record for helping women? All right, then, Bill Brown, what is your past accomplishment in helping women, and do you have any future plans?
In 1974, I formed what we call the Women's Law Project. Out of the Women's Law Project came the rape bill, which treats the victim as a victim and the criminal as a criminal, the jobs bill, which gave equal rights at the job place for women, the insurance bill, which gave equal access to insurance, the credit bill, which gave equal access to credit for women, the domestic violence bill, and the domestic violence shelter bill. That's what I've done in the past 6 or 7 years out of the Women's Law Project. Also, as far as hiring, about 40% of the lawyers that are presently on my staff are women, and we plan to hire a lot more.
For Gerald Springer, you indicated that Ohio has great water resources, and I'm curious why Ohio is the only Great Lakes state that allows dumping detergent phosphates where all the other Great Lakes states prohibit it. And being from Cincinnati, I'm curious if Procter & Gamble has some minor influence.
Procter and who? I want to personally thank you for that question. There is no question that if we are to use our water resources adequately, there are 3 uses of it, particularly in the development of our ports. We have to have part use in terms for recreational activity, partly used for residential activity in terms of developing our ports. And for example, down in Cincinnati, we developed our riverfront, and we divided it part recreational, part residential, and part commercial. that gets the best use of a city's water resources. And there has to be a balance. The most important, obviously, is the need for people to be able to drink water. And I support the strongest legislation possible, the strongest EPA legislation possible in terms of what we do with our water. Right now, the system we have is that we have a voluntary reporting system. In other words, if you pollute the waterways of America, not just Ohio, the very best that happens, I'm done? Well, it's better that I'm done than Procter & Gamble's done, so that's okay.
Mr. Brown, please. Last night on Issues and Answers, and here today, you announced your support for the death penalty, and last night you were against the abortions. Just what logic is it that you will save a child from abortion and yet possibly allow him to be barbecued in the electric chair?
Let's first take the premise that the death penalty is a deterrent, and it is. Felony murder means a murder in a rape, robbery, burglary, arson, kidnapping, aggravated assault. Those crimes since 1964 have leapfrogged over every other type of crime in this state but the theft of CB radios. Now, when you want to mix and blend crimes of emotion with crimes of intent, all you see is bumps. But I'm going to tell you something. I want to protect the future victims. And the death penalty is a deterrent. I love life. Love life. And the one thing we want to do is to protect future victims. You know, look, anybody who's ever seen the electric chair, anybody's ever seen it, it is the most lonely place on earth. And anybody that says that they're going to like it, there's something wrong with them. Boy, it's tough. But I'm going to tell you something. Until we have a better remedy, we're going to use the electric chair, like it or not.
This is directed to Attorney General Brown, as soon as he gets a drink of water. Mr. Brown, you have indicated your intention to institute programs to fight crime in this state, and the other candidates have not. How specifically do your programs and your platform to fight crime differ from the other candidates?
First of all, we will institute the death penalty. Secondly, we will introduce what we call mandatory sentencing. We want to eradicate the criminals thinking of this. For crimes of intent, crimes of violence, 1, I won't get caught. 2, if I do get caught, I'll beat the rap. 3, if I don't beat the rap, I'll get a fine. 4, if I don't get a fine, I'll get probation. 5, if I don't get probation, I'll get a suspended sentence. 6, if I don't get a suspended sentence, I'll get shock probation, 30 days and out. 7, if I don't get shock probation, I'll get shock parole. 8, if I don't get shock parole, I'll get a furlough. 9, if I don't get a furlough, I'll get a commutation. 10, I may have to spend 11 months in the high state penitentiary system. The mandatory sentencing system does this. 1, I won't get caught. 2, if I do get caught and I'm convicted, I'm gone for a set, minimum, predictable, absolutely certain period of time. That's the only way we're going to solve crime. It's the only weapon we have left. I'm talking so fast, I'm not sure I'm getting it all out. Secondly, and quickly, the governor can coordinate neighborhood watch, block watch, areas where we have citizen participation, number 1. Number 2, we have our own people looking out for each other. In Memphis, in high crime areas, they cut back 50% crimes against the person just with people coordinating, police, disseminating information, coordinating the activities. Thank you very much.
Don't move. Attorney General Brown, don't move. In your comments, you said you had a plan to reduce the cost of doing business in the state of Ohio. Would you explain that, please?
I just told Jerry I can't talk as fast as him. First of all, in health care, we're paying some of the highest health care costs in the nation. Who controls the cost of health care in this state? Governor. The governor, because he appoints the insurance director. It's the same way in energy. We have some of the highest natural gas costs in the country, right here. Reason being, the governor refuses to force the gas companies to put Ohio natural gas in their lines, which is obviously much cheaper, $1.91 a thousand versus $4.21 a thousand. Energy, health care, curtail that bureaucracy, that's 618 boards, commissions, and agencies that prey upon the small business person. I was talking to an accountant the other day who said this. He had a client that had to fill out 37 forms to go into business. We've got to encourage, we've got to lower these costs, lower health care costs, lower energy costs, lower the cost of doing business in the state of Ohio to keep business here.
I will refer to Mr. Springer, please. My name is Manuela Gomez. I belong to the seniors citizens of Ohio and especially to the 2S Community House. Right now, the president is taking everything away from us. Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, everything. Even he's going to take away all the senior citizen centers. Do you know that we go there for a hot lunch at 12 noon and recreation and many benefits that we are getting? What are you going to do from now on if you are elected governor of Ohio? Because we need support. Right now, the low-income people, they have so much to do.
I think we do have your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I refuse as a governor to preside over the dismantling of a compassionate society. I hope and will fight with every ounce of energy I have to make sure that President Reagan's new federalism doesn't take effect, that those services that are currently financed oftentimes by the federal government, that they don't get cut, that they don't get sent back all to the states. But I will say that if those programs get cut, senior citizen housing, social services that affect seniors, ability to subsidize utility payments for people that can't afford them, that we are prepared to make up that difference. We have to. We have no choice. There is no one in this society that is so fortunate and so lucky that they can go through life and saying, I made it, why can't they? I'm not going to support that program because I'm doing well. Because tomorrow it can be you. And we will finance it. As I said, there's only one way to pay for these services, and that's out of our pockets, and that means a statewide graduated income tax. There's no shortcut around it.
I would like to ask Mr. Celeste how he would handle the issue of social concern and the problems that derive from less and less money from government.
I believe that state government has a tremendous responsibility to its citizens with needs, particularly the very young and the very old. I believe that we must meet those needs for services, particularly at the community level. I believe when we talk about a Public Utilities Commission, which has changed, and I do intend to ask for the resignation of all the Public Utilities Commissioners, and I do expect to be able to replace that commission with people who are committed to the concerns of ordinary citizens, that those who are most utility dependent are those with the lowest incomes, elderly and poor, and that the first person I'd like to replace or place on the Public Utilities Commission would be a qualified senior citizen on a fixed income who could speak up for those people. It seems to me that too often we treat clients as somehow powerless to affect their own future, and involving them directly in the decisions as well as the delivery of services that affect their lives, whether that's the insurance department or the Public Utilities Commission or social service agencies, we should do so.
I have a question for Mr. Celeste. As you may know, I have some professional and personal interest, in the field of older persons and aging. There are 1 million people over the age of 65 in Ohio. Would you be willing to make a commitment today that you will establish a cabinet department, the first one in the state of Ohio, concerned with older people across the board of all level of government? And will you join with other governors and others to protect the cost of living increases that we have for Social Security benefits?
Let me start with the latter half of the question first. Yes, I will fight to protect the Social Security benefits of our older citizens, as I have fought to improve the public retirement systems of this state when I was chairman of the Retirement Committee in the House. I believe our more than 1 million older citizens are people for whom state government has to have a particular concern. In that context, I would want a cabinet-level department, not large in scope, but effectively staffed to be able to cut across the lines of departments and agencies that influence and impact on the lives of our older citizens, and speak with one voice on behalf of those more than 1 million Ohioans.
This is a question for Mr. Celeste. It seems to me a Democratic voter going into the booth can identify a clear difference in positions between Attorney General Brown and the other two candidates. Would you help us by defining the differences between yourself and Mr. Springer, and indicate why you think we should be voting for you as opposed to Mr. Springer if we were leaning in the direction other than Mr. Brown? I want to try to get a difference in position.
I mean, let me begin by saying I don't think that Attorney General Brown is the person to define where anyone else stands. He can speak for himself. I think that the most critical issue in this state is how do we get people working again. And I believe that when the Democratic Party lost its way, it lost its way because it gave up the initiative on how to have a healthy economy to Ronald Reagan and right-wing people who were talking to him about a whole different philosophy that involved the dismantlement of government and the ignoring of needs of ordinary working people as well as the poor and as well as the dependent. Dick Celeste is concerned as the first task of government to begin to get people working again in this state. And I believe I have the qualities of experience and intellect and leadership to do the best job of that. And I'm not going to define myself against Jerry Springer or against Bill Brown, but because of what I think we ought to be about.
I'd like to direct this question to Dick Celeste. If elected governor of the state of Ohio, what role will qualified women play in your administration?
Dick Celeste, as a member of the legislature, voted 4 times for the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. I wish I had the opportunity to vote for it again. I believe that the greatest waste of resources, or one of the greatest wastes of resources in this state and in this society for too long, have been women who have not had the opportunity to advance fully in their careers. As director of the Peace Corps, 13 out of 19 senior staff persons were women or minorities. We had women in non-traditional roles. I would want both the sex, the gender, and the complexion of state government to change dramatically at every level, cabinet on down, as a consequence of Dick Celeste being governor.
It seems we have run out of the time allotted for questions, and we will now go to the summary statements, and they will be delivered in reverse order from that which began the debate. So I will call first upon Attorney General William J. Brown for his summation.
Herb, thank you very much. I think we can probably define as the two candidates, one at my right and one at my left, as the Democrats of the 60s. And we're looking for Democrats of the 80s. We differ on energy, health care, taxes, crime, and the reorganization of government. I think that I can bring you a government that will be well managed, that will staff by the best people, both men and women, that we can possibly find. And as I've been Attorney General, I'll be governor, and I am going to be the governor. I think that's what the state of Ohio wants, is somebody that's strong, with some strength, sensitivity, and some stamina. Stamina to battle Ronald Reagan, the stamina to stand up to the people who of the special interest groups. And one last thing, speaking of Democrats, the Democratic Party in the 80s is going to be different than the Democratic Party of the 70s. Because the Democratic Party and its candidates and its incumbents have got to do one thing that we quit doing in the 70s. listen. We're going to listen to the people that pay the taxes and to the people that we serve. And Bill Brown, above all, is going to be a good listener. Thank you very much.
And we'll now hear again from Richard Celeste.
Over the last several weeks, I've been asked by a number of people what would I consider to be the best yardstick of success as in the office of governor. And in a way, my answer to that question is somewhat selfish. With 6 children, I'm concerned about the decisions they make about their future. And I want my children to feel that the challenge and the opportunities of the 80s and 90s can be realized, can be joined here in Ohio. I've talked to many, many people who are depressed and dismayed by the fact that they're out of work. I've talked to more who are concerned about their children or their grandchildren. We're going to be coming home from school or graduating soon into an uncertain job market, or who've moved to some other part of the country and being told to move by the president in some cruel and inhuman fashion to search for jobs in Colorado or Texas or California. I believe that the resources of the future, natural resources and human resources, are right here in Ohio. I believe that we have a tradition of invention and of innovation that extends beyond the Nela Parks and the NASAs. It extends to the Community Federation. It extends to the Jewish Welfare Federation, started here in Cleveland, which we can build on to meet the challenges of the 80s. And I honestly believe, that Dick Celeste and Merle Shoemaker as a leadership team can draw on our experience in state government, in federal government, and in that international arena to turn this state around so that my children and your children are excited to find their future here.
And we will now have the closing statement of Jerry Springer.
I suspect that the accusation that I'm of the 1960s, well, I did live during the 60s. And I might say that one thing is the same. I have not seen evidence that we have eliminated poverty, as we had not in the 60s. I have not seen that today, in 1982, we have eliminated the problems of ill health, ill housing, decaying cities, people hurting, people in need. And so those feelings are still the same. I have the same feelings I had as soon as I was old enough to develop a political philosophy. We are now living in the 1980s. And the 1980s deserve the same caring, the same sense of compassion. We have to have a government that feels, not just manages. You hire managers, you can't hire leaders. We have to inspire people, inspire the Democratic Party to say we have not forgotten what our roots are. For the last 10 years, I've been a city councilman and mayor of the city of Cincinnati. The city's doing pretty well. I've had to live my political philosophy every single day for 10 years in one of the toughest communities in America to live it, particularly if you have my political philosophy. So I'm not new to this. The only thing I haven't done before is run for statewide office. And I'm not sure that's a major requirement. I think running for statewide office before doesn't make you smarter, doesn't necessarily make you more creative, doesn't necessarily make you more innovative. It just makes you tired. And Ohio doesn't need. I'm not sure Ohio needs a tired governor. You won't be disappointed if I'm governor, I promise you that.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the debate. let me remind you, since we have a few moments of airtime left to us, that next week's forum will bring to this distinguished platform the ambassador of the State of Israel to the United Nations, and the following Friday we'll have a visit by Senator John Glenn winding up the affairs of the City Club at this location. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day. The City Club Forum is adjourned.